everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today I am starting yet another vlog and this time I'm going to be reading the horror nominees for the Goodreads Choice Awards for 2023. So if you missed it, I did a whole reaction video to the nominees list. There were some fun surprises on there, but I definitely hadn't read most of the books on most of the category lists. So over the next couple months, I'm going to try to read a few of the books on a few of the categories, a lot of which you guys have expressed you would love to see reading vlogs of. So today is the first one I'm going to be reading from the horror category. So on the horror category, there are actually two books that I had already read. One was Rouge by Mona Awad, and then the other one was Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. So I've left both of those off my list to read, but out of the other 18 on the category list, I realized that I actually had 6 of them on my TBR. So during this vlog over the next week, I'm going to try to get through as many of those 6 books as I can. So in no particular order, the 6 books include, first up, Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. This book, from what the description says, is a sly, surprising, and razor-sharp novel that follows a young musician in an elite, beauty-obsessed world where perfection comes at a staggering cost. This one has been on my TBR for a while, and it seems like it's going to be a bit of a chilling read. It's a very short one as well, and excitingly for this vlog, I'm actually going to be buddy reading Natural Beauty on the app Fable, who's kindly sponsoring today's video, and I'm going to be buddy reading it with the lovely Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride. If you don't know Elizabeth, she's absolutely lovely and she has some really amazing book recs and beautifully shot videos. If you're not following her on YouTube or Instagram, you should go check her out now. She also has some really great bullet journaling content, so you should definitely go check that out as well. So I'll talk about the buddy reading process on Fable in a little bit, but let me tell you about the other books on this list. So after Natural Beauty, I'm probably gonna go next to A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I have read one of T. Kingfisher's previous books, which is the novella What Moves the Dead. It's based off an Edgar Allan Poe story, and it was honestly a really atmospheric, creepy read. So I'm hoping that this one will give me similar vibes, but I have heard sort of mixed opinions on this one. I do know it's a bit of a haunted house story, but aside from that, I don't know much, so I'm hoping that it'll be good. We'll see. After that, I'm hoping to pick up Lone Women by Victor Lavelle. I don't know too much about this book, but I've seen it around a lot and I got it on an ebook deal a while back. From what I know, this one is set in the early 1900s, like 1915. And the description says, Lone Women blends shimmering prose and unforgettable cast of adventurers who find horror and sisterhood in a brutal landscape and a portrait of early 20th century America like you've never seen. At its heart, it's a gripping story of a woman desperate to bury her past or redeem it. From that description, this seems pretty interesting, but it's obviously really vague, so I feel like this one might be a hit or miss for me. We'll see. After that, I'm probably going to pick up Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. This one is written by an Indigenous author, and it follows a young Native girl as she tries to hunt down answers about these women who have been going missing from her tribe's reservation lands. And then the last 2 books on this list, so the first is How to Sell a Haunted House by Gertie Hendricks. I think I might switch to this one depending on if I'm not feeling some of the other ones initially. I don't want to spend too much time on any of these if I'm not feeling them by like the 30% in. And I feel like I have a high chance of liking How to Sell a Haunted House because it's by Gertie Hendricks, who, if you don't know, is the author of the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which was one of my favorite books of, I think, 2021. I absolutely loved it when I read it and I was so impressed by the writing. So I'm hoping that this book will be similar, but I think it's a very different book, so we'll see. And then the last book that I've picked out from the nominees to read is Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. This is actually a translated novel and it's by a really big author in Latin America. And the description says, a woman's mysterious death puts her husband and son on a collision course with her demonic family in the first novel to be translated into English by the International Booker Prize shortlisted author of The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. I am very, very excited to see what I think of this one. It's been on my list to read for ages. It has a really high rating on Goodreads as well, but it is a massive, massive book. I've seen it in person and it's like super thick. So that's why I don't think I'll get the chance to fully finish it in this vlog, but we'll see. So those are the 6 books on my list to read for this video. We'll see how many of them I can get through. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to be buddy reading Natural Beauty with Elizabeth from Plant-Based Bride, and we're going to be using the app Fable to do our buddy read, and Fable is kindly sponsoring today's video. So if you didn't didn't know, Fable is a community-powered app for finding, reading, and discussing books with other people. For those of you who've been with my channel for a while, you may remember that I used to host my book club, the Reading Color Book Club, on Fable. And although Fable can be used for big book clubs like that, it can also be used for private book clubs with some of your friends, family, coworkers, whoever they are, for some buddy reads, like how Elizabeth and I are using it for Natural Beauty. You and your friends can pick a book to read and then set suggested milestones of where you should get to by a certain point. And then from there, the Fable app actually automatically creates chapter discussion rooms for the book so that you can read and discuss without any spoilers. Once you're done the book, you can reflect and leave a review about the book and then switch to your next book for your next buddy read or book club meeting. Although Fable is a community-powered app, it's also actually a bookseller and a app to actually read books. If you and your friends choose to actually buy the book on Fable itself, then you can actually see each other's highlights and comments and emoji reactions to any part of the book. It's really fun because that way you can see how your friends are feeling about the book while you are reading it yourself. But if you're not feeling that, you can also just keep your annotations and notes to yourself just for a private reading experience. So if all this sounds cool, then you should definitely go check out Fable down below. In the clubs tab, you can go click the little blue plus icon to create your buddy read. And from there, you can invite a few friends to join your buddy read. And for each friend that joins, you'll both actually get a $5 credit that you can use towards buying the ebook of your book club's book. Inviting friends is a really easy way to get a free ebook, so you guys should definitely go check it out and jump on the offer and start your own buddy reads and book clubs. So with that said, I'm super excited to get into my buddy read with Elizabeth. She's already started the book and left a couple comments on Fable already, so I definitely need to go and catch up tonight. Today's Friday, November 17th. I actually just finished up another vlog, so I'm starting this one for the evening. I'm gonna try to get through a bit of Natural Beauty tonight before I go out to dinner with one of my friends, and then I'll probably try to finish it tomorrow since it's the weekend. So I didn't get much reading done last night, but I did get a few chapters into Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang, and I was on Fable reacting to the things that Elizabeth had remarked on and just like highlighting my own parts. So I've been reading on the Fable app, which has been really fun. I think I'm on chapter 4 right now. So far, the book is good. It's reminding me a lot of two different books. It's reminding me a lot of Rouge by Mona Awad, which Elizabeth also pointed out. And then it's also reminding me of Y/N by Esther Yi. I think there's something about the passivity of the character and just the way that we don't know too much about her, like going right into the book, that is reminding me of Y/N. And this is also reminding me of Rouge because of the whole discussion of beauty and like the idea of beauty treatments and all that. So essentially when the book opens, our main character, who is Chinese American, she is starting this new job at this like beauty salon, and she's like hearing about the different treatments that everyone does, and like she herself as an employee has to do some treatments and take home some beauty products and stuff. But prior to that, she worked at like a fast food restaurant, I think, and she was sort of lured into this new beauty salon job by this person named Sage, and it's just like all very vague and creepy. But now I'm getting into a more interesting part of the book where they're actually talking about the main character's like past and also her upbringing with her parents who fled China after the Cultural Revolution. They're both pianists, and so it's talking about like her childhood as a piano prodigy, which seems pretty interesting. So I'm curious to see how the book is gonna go. I feel like it's gonna be one of those books that doesn't have much plot to it, so I have a feeling I'm not gonna love it that much, but we'll see. So yeah, that's my update for this book right now. I think I might switch to the audiobook of Silver Nitrate so that I can get further on that. I just realized I didn't even mention that Silver Nitrate is one of the books on the list to read for this vlog. I started in my last vlog and I'm about 8 chapters in. It's going good so far, but it is a little bit slow to start, I would say. And I definitely think it's not going to be my favorite of Silvia Moreno Garcia's books just because the topic is kind of this really obscure thing. It's like old Mexican films. And although I really, really like the characters, and that's basically what I'm reading the book for, the rest of it is kind of not really doing it for me, but we'll see. Right now I'm about to leave my apartment. It's about 1 p.m. There's a protest going on in downtown Toronto for Palestine, so I'm going to be joining that. And then after that, I'm going to be heading to a book signing in the evening for the lovely S.J. Sindhu, who's one of my favorite authors. She is a Tamil author, and she's written like a bunch of books that I love. Marriage of Thousand Lies, Blue Skin Gods, The Goth House Experiment. So I am really excited to meet her in person and get my book signed. So I'm hoping to come back home in between the protest and the book event, grab my stuff, change, and head to that event. And then hopefully at night I'll get back to reading more of Natural Beauty. So yesterday I didn't get much reading done, but I did go to the lovely book signing event for S.J. Sindhu for her new short story collection, The Goth House Experiment. Actually, let me get it. So this is her short story collection, The Goth House Experiment and Other Stories. And funnily enough, this is a horror vlog, and some of the stories in this collection have a horror bend to them. I wouldn't say this is a horror collection completely, but it does have some like spooky, creepy elements to it that I think make it really fun. So yeah, I read this on the Arc a few months ago and really loved it, and overall just love her books. So it was actually really nice to just go to her event and like listen to her speak and have her sign my books as well. She was super sweet, and I took a photo with her, and yeah, it was just really lovely to see like another Tamil person, another queer Tamil person out there doing things in the arts and like just killing it. And I was just so inspired, I think, by the end of the night. And I was like, oh my god, I want to get back to writing and I want to do all of this stuff. So yeah, I was just like feeling very ambitious after the event, and yeah, it was a good feeling. Today it's about 12:30 p.m. I just had lunch. I had sort of a slow morning. I'm still kind of sleepy. I had like an espresso, but I need more coffee. But the plan for today is actually pretty chill. I just need to edit a couple videos that I need to have done by tomorrow, either to submit to a sponsor or to upload for you guys to see. And then I also need to get through some more reading for this vlog, so I need to finish Natural Beauty, and then I also want to finish Silver Nitrate. So Silver Nitrate I got a little bit further in this morning. I was listening to the audiobook, so I'm a few more chapters in. It's starting to like get a little bit more interesting and things are happening, so I'm intrigued, but it's still a little bit on the slower side. I am thankful that I have the audiobook now. I borrowed it from the library, so that's helping me get through it a little bit quicker. So that is the plan for today. We'll see if I succeed, and I will update you when I'm back, I guess. I have finally finished Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and I have thoughts. So I was listening to the audiobook of this while I was at the coffee shop. I did get some editing done, but I kind of got tired. I had like a latte and a coffee and still was feeling sleepy. I'm just like having a sleepy day. But in terms of the book, honestly guys, I feel like this is my least favorite Sylvia Moreno Garcia book, which is deeply upsetting. As you guys know, I love Sylvia Moreno Garcia books. Like, I've only not read, I think, 1 or 2 of her books, but this one honestly just wasn't it. Out of her books, I think this one's the most similar to Velvet Was the Night, which was her release from a few years ago. That one also felt like it was focused on a really obscure topic and was a little hard to follow as well. But I think this one, something about it just wasn't clicking for me, and like, although I liked the main characters and found them intriguing, it just wasn't doing it for me after, you know, the first 30%. I honestly should have just DNF'd this, but I was like, it's Sylvia Moreno Garcia, I need to keep going. So I was honestly just listening to the audiobook at the end just to get through it, because like I was not enjoying myself. I was just like, get to the point. The characters were just like running in circles as it went on. I think there just wasn't enough to keep me excited. Maybe it's also because I started tuning out more as I was listening to the audiobook, but I still think even if I had read it physically, like I would have taken so long with it, and I just wanted to get it done. So yeah, this is a not so promising start to this vlog. I still have 6 other books on the list. I think I'll rate all the books at the end of the video just so that I can kind of compare them to each other, but this one's definitely not looking more than a 3. Today, I started the audiobook for How to Sell a Haunted House. I'm like an hour and 40 minutes into the audiobook. It is a longer book, but I feel like based off the audiobook and how the story is paced, it's going pretty quick. Like, it doesn't feel like a long book or like a slow one, so I'm actually quite happy about that. I wasn't intending to start this one next, but I just kind of felt like starting another audiobook, so that's why I picked this up. And so far, I'm really liking this. Basically, the premise is that we have our main character who's a single mom, and she gets this call from her brother basically, and he tells her that their parents are dead suddenly, and she's just very confused and doesn't know what's going on. She is heading back home to deal with her parents' house and figure out if they should sell it or what. And so obviously this house is going to be haunted because the title of this book is How to Sell a Haunted House. And already I'm loving the vibes, and I'm loving sort of the dark humor to the entire book, and I feel like the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires had a similar type of humor and vibe that I really enjoyed. So this one's starting to feel a little bit similar to that, so I'm really excited. I feel like this one is actually going to have a lot more spooky vibes to it than like Silver Nitrate did for me. Silver Nitrate had some spooky bits, but nothing that really captured me. I feel like Sylvia Moreno Garcia did her spooky bits in Mexican Gothic much better than anything in Silver Nitrate. I am hoping that this one will deliver the right amount of spookiness, and I think I can probably finish this one in the next couple days. I haven't gotten much further on Natural Beauty just because I didn't feel like reading on my phone or on my e-reader. I don't have an audiobook for that one, but of what I read last night, like, I do really like the sort of look into the main character's childhood, and she's someone who grew up as like an immigrant but also as someone with not much. They weren't well off, and there's like this really lovely examination of the main character, like as she starts to get money, her stipend at the conservatory that she's performing at and learning at. She feels guilty for spending money that she could have been sending to her parents, and there's all these like beautiful little moments that like feel so real. As someone who like grew up with not that much, a lot of it felt really real, so I appreciated that. So that has warmed me to that book a lot more, so I'm excited to see where it's gonna go. I do feel like it feels a bit more grounded than Rouge, so I'm hoping that'll be better. So at work today, I was able to listen to the audiobook of How to Sell a Haunted House a little bit more, and I also listened to more of it like last night and this morning before work, and so now I'm 82% into the book. I have about 2 hours left of the audiobook. The audiobook's pretty good actually, and now that I've gotten so much further in, I am starting to see the story a little bit more clearly. It's a bit different than I was expecting, and I feel like the title and the cover and just like the premise doesn't really deliver when you get into the book, because I feel like the haunting has less to do with the house and more to do with other things. The book is quite funny while also being a little creepy, but I'm finding that it's not as creepy, in my opinion, as the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. That book I had literal chills for some parts of it, whereas this one I'm not so much feeling that. Maybe it's because I'm listening to the audiobook, so I'm not as focused. And 82% in, this isn't my favorite, but it is enjoyable. I do like the characters, and I like the development of the sibling relationship in the book. And there were a couple scenes that were like kind of crazy and like creepy and kind of horrific, but I do think that the horror element of this again isn't what I expected, and so therefore I'm a little less impressed by it, because I've read some great haunted house books. White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson comes to mind as a really good one. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So I was expecting something a little bit more like creepy like those ones and eerie and more to do with the house, but this one really isn't about the house at all. It's more about the family and some other weird stuff. There's a lot of puppets involved, which isn't really my favorite thing. Even in like horror movies that involve puppets or dolls, like it's not my thing at all. So I think that's part of why I'm not enjoying this as much as I expected to. Regardless though, I'm almost done, and I'm curious to see how the whole thing is going to be solved. One thing I found really interesting about the book is that it's split into different sections, and each section is named after one of the stages of grief. And like the book obviously opens up with the main character finding out that both her parents are dead. She and her brother are trying to figure out what to do with like their assets and, you know, the house and all of that. And there's this huge tension between her and her brother. And while I thought the entire book would be told by the daughter's perspective, there actually came a point where there was a couple chapters from the brother's perspective, Mark. And I found those chapters to be pretty interesting because the book kind of gets a little political, which I did not expect at all and which I really enjoyed. So those aspects were nice, but I do wish it was like more of the book. It was just kind of this little sort of detour in the story that sort of added to the character but didn't do much else. And so while I enjoyed the inclusion, I was also like, what was the point of this? Like, is this going to add to any other part of the story? But this book particularly comments on like post 9/11 and the war on terror and the war with Afghanistan and all of the horrible things that the US government partook in and all of the like protesting and stuff that happened against it. And it's just so interesting the way that it's like mentioned in the book, but there's like nothing else really talked about in regards to that later in the book. So I just kind of questioned why it was included, and it was just like making me think of, you know, everything that's going on right now. How do I feel about it? I don't know. Anyways, that is basically my update for today. I'm gonna finish the audiobook for this while I heat up dinner and eat. I don't think I will get to reading more of Natural Beauty tonight, but I'm hoping to finish it tomorrow and also get started on one of the other books on the docket as well. Hello friends, so I am on chapter 13 of Natural Beauty by Ling Huang, and I'm starting to really like this. I initially wasn't enjoying it because the book just kind of drops you in the middle of things and you're kind of confused, and I was struggling to connect with the main character because we didn't know much about her. But now I've reached a point where we have enough background about her, and you know, she's actually starting to do things in the book and we're getting to know her a lot better, and so I am more endeared towards her. And so I'm at chapter 13, which is about almost halfway through the book, and it's starting to get a little creepy and a little weird, which I'm really liking, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. We've also gotten a little bit more insight into some of the other characters, and there's a little bit of a potential sapphic relationship on the horizon, which I'm excited for. And the book is also just tapping into like different themes of like beauty standards and consumerism and a lot of stuff like that, and so I'm really enjoying those bits and like the commentary around that. I am in such a mood for this, so I think I'm just gonna try and binge read the rest of it and finish it today, so I'll check back with you when I do. Okay, so it's a few days later. I wasn't feeling well the past couple of days and didn't feel up to reading or vlogging or anything, but it's a new day and I'm feeling a little bit better. And last night I actually finished reading Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. Guys, this book was so freaking good. The second half of the book just took it to another level for me. I feel like all of the plot points and all of the themes just really came together in a really nice way, and the book was just so thrilling and also so horrific. All of the horror bits just get more intensified and more obvious as you get through the second half of the book. So I was just enjoying myself so much. I kind of binge read the last half of the book in one go, and it was so satisfying. This is one of those books that starts off one way and you think it's gonna be one thing, but it turns out to be a little bit more than that, and I honestly just loved every part of the journey. I honestly think if the book had gotten rid of like the first chapter or two, or had made things a little bit clearer from the first couple chapters, I would have been hooked from the start. But otherwise, like as we go through the book and as the main character gains a little bit more agency and as we're learning more things and as she's doing more things, like it just gets super interesting. We learn a lot more about a lot of these side characters as we go along. There's a lot of queer undertones to the book, and also just a lot of like weird and sinister things going on. It really taps into this idea of like clean beauty and like natural beauty and, you know, natural products and what all of that means, but it also taps into like what we define as beauty and what is the type of beauty that we consider beautiful, and does it relate to a specific race? You know, do we think of white people as more beautiful than other people? And overall, it was just a really batshit crazy book, honestly. Like the end of the book kind of went off the rails, but I loved it, and it was so weird and it was so creepy and horrific, but I think that's what made it for me. So out of the 3 books that I've read so far for this vlog, I do think that this one is probably my favorite so far. It just did something unexpected, and I'm so glad that I picked it up. Elizabeth and I were kind of going back and forth on Fable as we were reading the book, and it was fun because one of us was always like ahead of the other, so it would be nice to just like be reading and then see her highlights, and then, you know, she'd be reading and she'd see my highlights and like my comments and stuff, and so it was just nice to like interact in that way, and also just see the types of things that like she highlighted versus what I would highlight. Highly recommend checking out Fable and using the experience like the e-reader on the app itself, because getting to see that interactiveness with your buddy is just so much fun and honestly added to the reading experience for me. Anyways, with that said, I finished 3 books so far and I still have 5 more to go. I actually added another book to the TBR for this video, and we'll see if I get to it or if I swap it for one of the other ones, but that is The Reformatory. This is one of the books on the nominees list, but I hadn't really had it on my radar, but I was clicking through to the Goodreads page and it's actually really highly rated and it's by a Black author, and so that just had me really excited because, as you guys know, I tend to prioritize books by BIPOC authors, so I definitely think that that one's going to move up on my reading list for this video. We'll see if I get to all 5 of the other books, but I definitely want to get to The Reformatory, and I definitely want to finish Our Share of Night, which I have started on the audiobook. It's going pretty good so far. It's kind of slow to start, and I'm not really sure where it's going to go. Basically, it follows this like father and son who both have like these magical powers. They're kind of like mediums, and they can see ghosts, and they're part of this like larger family and like order that is sort of wanting to keep them as part of this like magical system. And the father and son are trying to sort of run away because the mother of the child was killed by this order, or there's some like sinister things going on. I'm not explaining this very well, but it has like huge elements of like family and magic. And it's also set in like multiple locations. It's set in London and then also in the 1960s in Argentina and during like the military dictatorship. And so it's got not only like these supernatural and occult elements, but it's also got a lot of like political elements to it as well. So I'm enjoying this one. I'm about 2 hours and 30 minutes into the audiobook, but it's a 24-hour audiobook, so I don't know how quickly I can get through this one, but I'm gonna try to start one of the other books this weekend as well. So yes, I will check back with you later once I've done some more reading. Okay, so it's a new day, and I haven't gotten much further on Our Share of Night. I think that's partly because I'm just not really feeling this book all that much. I'm about 4 hours into the audiobook now, and I listened to more of it yesterday, but really, I feel like nothing much is happening in the book, and I did actually search it up on Goodreads again, and although it has a high rating, some of the reviews I checked did talk about how, like, although they liked it, the pacing was, like, really slow, and not much was happening for, you know, the amount of words and pages there were. And so that has me thinking that this isn't really gonna pick up all that much for me anytime soon, and I honestly just don't have the patience right now to wait for it to get better. So I think I may DNF this book for this video at least. I might pick it back up some other time, but for now, I'm gonna put it to rest because I would like to get to some of the other books on the TBR. Yesterday, I was out with one of my friends for brunch, and I happened to have the pleasure of walking by one of my favorite independent bookstores here in Toronto, which it's like a horror bookshop, and so I actually happened to grab a physical copy of Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. I feel like after how much I enjoyed this book, I needed to have a physical copy so I could like hold it up in videos and that kind of thing. So yeah, this is definitely the front runner for this video at the moment. But I did start reading The Reformatory by Tananarive Due, and this book is actually going pretty well so far for me. I got about 8 chapters into it on the ebook. I was reading at a coffee shop with one of my friends earlier today. Basically, the premise is that we are following our characters in the 1950s, I believe, in Florida, and our main character is this young boy named Robert, and then he has an older sister, and essentially their mother has died. The father has sort of run to Chicago because there was a risk of him getting arrested. And mind you, this is like Jim Crow era America. And so essentially the first chapter sort of opens up with our main character, Robert, who's like 12, getting into a unlucky situation where he happens to kick this white boy who is sort of making a pass at his older sister, Gloria. And so he gets reprimanded, taken to court, and essentially sent off to this awful reformatory school. And then, you know, we're following him as he starts at the school. And interestingly enough, we're not just following Robert as he's in the school, we're also following his sister Gloria while she's like outside of the school and trying to help him. And I haven't gotten much into her parts, but I am excited to see where that goes. So far, I think this is going pretty well. There's a talk of, you know, the reformatory being haunted and that kind of thing, and ghosts around, and how the kids are the only ones who can see the ghosts. So that has me excited. But I think like part of this is also just gonna be like real life horror, historical horror, like the horrors of what has been done to Black people in America. Although we're following characters who are children in the book, I don't feel like it's a YA or that it's like a middle grade. It feels like an adult novel just because like we sometimes get slight perspectives from some of the older characters, and also just the way that the author approaches the narration feels more adult. Now, I still have 3 more books on this TBR: Lone Woman, Sisters of the Lost Nation, and A House with Good Bones, and I honestly can't decide which one I want to read next. So I decided to post a Instagram story today and see if I could get some of you guys to vote on what I should read next, because I think after I finish the Reformatory, I'll only be able to fit in maybe one more book before I need to end this vlog. So I want to make sure it's one that like you guys want me to read, or one that's going to be really good. I feel like Sisters of the Lost Nation is the one that I would most likely lean to, but I want to see what all of you think. Maybe there's one that you guys think I might really enjoy. So I just posted that story, so we'll see what results I get, and depending on that, I will pick up the next book. But okay, so I've gotten much further into the Reformatory, and I have to say I'm quite liking this one. It is a lot less horror than it is like historical fiction, though, I would say. A lot of the plot is surrounding Gloria, the sister, trying to get her brother out of the Reformatory, and then her brother being in the Reformatory. The Reformatory chapters, from Robert the boy's perspective, have a little bit more of like the spooky vibes and have some more of these supernatural things going on. And while Gloria's chapters have a teeny tiny hint of that, there's not much to her chapters. But despite the fact that this is less of a horror book, I am really enjoying like all of the historical aspects, the discussions of race, the discussions of like the legal system and, you know, segregation and all of these other things going on, and all of the legacies of slavery even after abolition. And another thing I'm really enjoying is the fact that there are other side characters that are coming in throughout the book that are quite interesting in my opinion, who are in interesting positions, and it's just fascinating to read about them. Like there's a character who's a white woman who is Gloria's boss, and she is a little bit more of a kinder white woman in this situation, and it's just interesting to see like the difficult position that she's put in, but then also how she could be doing so much more. And then there's also a Jewish character in the book who is a social worker, and he is also put in this like difficult position, facing anti-Semitism and then also trying to advocate for this young black boy, but then also wanting to protect himself. So I really like just the nuances and layers that are within the book, and I think this is delivering on a lot of the aspects that I was expecting when going into it. But I do think that the horror element is just so small right now, and I have reached the halfway point, and I think the pacing is starting to pick up. I do feel like the first third of the book was kind of slow, but now we've actually gotten into more of the plot and things are happening and it's getting a little bit more exciting. We're also getting some chapters or parts of chapters that are from the perspective of some of these side characters, some of the not so great ones and some of the great ones, and so I'm really intrigued by those chapters or parts, and I'm hoping that we'll get more of those as the book goes along. And with that said, for my next read, I did check the Instagram story that I put up, the poll, and it looks like Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina is the one that won. I've heard mainly good things about this book. I'm trying to see if I can find an audiobook from the library or one of my subscriptions so that I can listen to that, because I have been struggling with eye reading, I feel like, recently, especially this past week. It's just been a lot more difficult for me. Like my ADHD and bipolar have just been not great, and I've not been feeling the greatest this week, but a lot of audiobooks have been helping. I did find an audiobook for the Reformatory, and that one's actually really good. It's narrated by this voice actor that I have listened to before, so I'm quite enjoying it, and it's definitely helping me get through the book a little quicker. Okay, so last night I finished the Reformatory while I was at the coffee shop. I did tune out a little bit while I was listening to the audiobook at the end, but overall I think it was a really great book. It had a really solid ending, and all the themes of the book were just really interesting and were done really well, in my opinion. While I really enjoyed it and I really liked the characters, I found them really endearing, and I really liked a lot of the side characters as well. The one thing that I struggled with, and I said this in one of the previous clips, was that it was just too long, and I feel like the pacing was really off. And overall, I just felt like the book could have been much shorter and a little bit less repetitive, at least in my opinion. I think that was kind of why I was slogging through some of it at some parts and like just forcing myself to listen to the audiobook. And this sort of brings me to my next point, which involves me ending the vlog here with The Reformatory as the final book on this vlog. And the reason is twofold. So last night, the Goodreads finalists list came out, and that included the finalist list for horror. And unfortunately, a few of the books on the list for this video were not on there, including The Reformatory, Natural Beauty, which I have to say is definitely my favorite from this video, and then also Sisters of the Lost Nation. And funnily enough, Sisters of the Lost Nation was the one that everyone voted for on Instagram for me to read next. And now that I am faced with this information, I did debate whether I wanted to pick up Lone Woman or A House with Good Bones next, but honestly, I'm not really feeling either of them all that much right now. Like, I don't really feel like picking them up. And then Sisters of the Lost Nation, after having sort of rushed through The Reformatory, I feel like I don't want to do the same thing with Sisters of the Lost Nation. It's by an Indigenous author, and I think it's going to be a really great book, but I don't want to ruin my experience with it by including it in this vlog and trying to rush through it in order to hit my deadline for this video. So I think what I'm going to do instead is save Sisters of the Lost Nation for another time, another video, or just for another recommendation video, and really take my time with it and read it properly. If you're interested in my full reaction to the Goodreads finalist list, you should definitely go check out my bindery down below. It's my exclusive community where you can get exclusive content from me, including that reaction video. I had a lot of thoughts about it, and I'm not super pleased with the fact that several of the nominees that I actually really liked did not make it into the finalist list, including, of course, Natural Beauty. I was so shook that it didn't make it to the finalist list because it's such a fantastic book, and if I had to recommend one book out of all the ones that I read in this video, that is definitely the one I think you guys should pick up. So with all this said, I thought it might be fun to rank the 5 books that I read in this video. At the bottom, I would obviously put Our Share of Night because that's one I DNF'd. I can't really say more about that one. I just feel like I didn't really connect with it at this moment. Maybe I'll try to pick it up another time, but the pacing was just really not it for me. Just above that, I would put Silver Nitrate. Although I love Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, this book just wasn't it for me. It was like watching paint dry for most of the book, and I just really wanted more to happen in it. Above that, I think I would put How to Sell a Haunted House and The Reformatory on similar ground. Although I appreciate the themes that The Reformatory covers, I do think that How to Sell a Haunted House was more enjoyable in some aspects and also had more horror elements as well. The Reformatory is really worth the read because of the topics that it deals with, the historical context. Like, I think it's less of a great horror book and more of a great overall book, general fiction, literary fiction book. And then, of course, in first place, I would put Natural Beauty. Again, it was the most horrific to me out of all the books, but it was also just overall a really great book. Like, I could see it being shelved in literary fiction as well and being a really impactful book in that genre. One thing I've sort of felt while doing this experiment and also while, looking at the finalists for the Goodreads Choice Awards this year is that genres are just so messy, and I feel like our classifications of genre are so messy, and I feel like the way that publishers and Goodreads librarians and just the general public classifies certain books in certain genres is just a little messy. Some people consider certain books to be horror or literary fiction, whereas other people may not think the same thing, and our definitions of each genre are a little bit different. So it's just interesting to see how these books sort of ranged across, the least to most horrific, and how some of them were actually more, to me, like historical or literary fictions. Those are all the interesting insights that I have. I really hope you guys enjoy this video. I would love to hear from you down below what you thought of any of these books. If there's any on the nominees or finalist list that I should definitely pick up at another point. And if you like this video, stay tuned for some more vlogs of me reading the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees / finalists. Next up, I'm going to be doing fantasy, and I'm really excited for that one because there's some big books there that I know a lot of you will be excited to hear my opinions on. So I cannot wait for that. As always, if you haven't already, go check out my Instagram, Goodreads, TikTok, and bindery down below. And I will see you guys in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!